Okay. It's just about 7 o'clock here on the 20th day of June 2023. This is the regular meeting of the Common Council of the City of Oneonta, and we're calling it to order.
Sure. Mayor Janik.
Here.
Councilmember Murphy.
Here.
Councilmember Davies.
Here.
Councilmember Risberger.
Here.
Councilmember LaFarishu. Councilmember Carson.
Here.
Councilmember Harrington.
Here.
Councilmember Falco. Here.
Good. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. See you all. We have petitioners and public hearings. And we have a public hearing before the mayor on the proposed ordinance amending section 300-13, which is the zoning university district of the code of the city of Oneonta. This ordinance was laid on the desk on March 21st, 2023, and approved by the Common Council on June 6th, 2023. And do we have anybody here to speak on that? All right. Well, then we move on to a public hearing to consider fraternity and sorority operating permits. And have we anyone here to speak on that? Yes. If you'd introduce yourself, tell me where you live.
Hi, my name is Jake Thorey. I live back home on Long Island, but more importantly here, I live at 61 Elm Street. I'm part of the fraternity at Hartwick College, Tau Kappa Epsilon, and we're looking for our operating permit for our house. We're trying to give as much back to our community and build up our house as much as we can, and we look forward to continue working with the community in a very different way this year, and through that might be more fundraising opportunities to supply things rather than giving back physically. We want to be able to pay and fund for things for this town to improve it in a specific way. So that's something that we're looking to do this year and give back to our community. So that's part of the reason we're also looking for our operating permit, is so we can do that.
Appreciate that. Anything to add to that, or shall I let you go and move on to somebody else? All right. Is there anyone else?
Mayor,
Yes.
can we ask questions?
Certainly. It was you first.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if I should ask you this question or our code enforcement officer this question. Your house has been, there's parts of that house that need to be painted. The repairs were done last year. And I'm glad the repairs were done, but nothing has been painted to make the house look presentable to the neighborhood.
Yes, that is something we are working on this summer, is kind of looking for a way that we can all bring it together, kind of.
Okay, well, whose responsibility is it to paint the house, the fraternity or the owner?
The owner.
Okay. Has he reached out and said anything about painting the house?
I mean, the representatives.
I can represent the owner.
You are?
I am Dan Hunter. I'm the local agent for the owner.
Okay.
And I can see that there are aspects of that need to be painted, and I can 100% bring that to the owner's attention and tell it that is the council's prerogative that we address that this summer.
Well, it's the neighborhood prerogative, not the council. If he wants to be a good neighbor, he should paint the house.
Understandable.
Okay, thank you.
So we feel pretty confident that's going to happen then?
Absolutely then.
All right, moving on to anybody else who'd like to speak to this, yes? And if you'd introduce yourself, tell us where you live.
My name is Jabbar Greenwood. I'm with Phi Kappa Psi at SUNY Oneonta, and I live in Albany back home, but I also live at 56 Maple, and we are requesting a special use permit so our fraternity can keep giving back to the community. We participate in street cleanups every Sunday on Main Street. We have good relations with our neighbors. We tend to try to help out and do different fundraisers on campus. Like we did our Pals for Paws, and we raise money for the community sometimes, and we're just looking to get the special use permit for our house. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone? Yes, Dave.
Sorry. Well, this one is, in particular, is in my ward, so I know you guys have had a few rough years. So I'm hearing that things are better now, so I'm looking forward to next year and having a good year again. So, good luck.
Thank you.
Have we anyone else to speak? Okay, so I'll just say that the students at SUNY Oneonta are approximately 1/2 of our constituency. And so that means that you are equal in our expectation of you as you should be of us in terms of being good neighbors and in terms of caring for what your neighborhood looks like. So we appreciate the fact that you are inclined to be good neighbors, that you are inclined to take care of your house and make certain that you wind up being an asset not only to the neighborhood but to the city. So thank you very much, guys. All right, if there's nothing else on this, then we'll close our public hearings piece, and I wonder, do we have anybody here to speak relative to petitions of the Common Council? Yes. And you are?
Joe Temming, 8 Hudson Street. I also work for the city. Excuse me, I just wanted to quickly just acknowledge the other day that, I'm sorry, I want to quickly acknowledge our DPW department. The other day I was driving around the city, just a short drive, and in that short drive I saw down a side street what I think is referred to as the Camel, being used by 2 employees cleaning out a drain. On Main Street there were some employees, I'm not positive if they were just emptying trash cans or if they were working on planting beds. In the park there was employees working in the Demaski Field parking lot, both cleaning and patching in preparation for additional work to be done, as well as park employees that were mowing and trimming. It was a very active morning, and I know that department is seeking additional people. There's some vacancies in that department, so I just wanted to acknowledge the efforts of those employees publicly. I know we have a lot of great employees across the city in all different departments, but I just wanted to, it was an interesting trip just to see so many things happening, kind of a bunch of different things that they do. And I know there's even more that they do, so I just wanted to thank them.
I'm sure they appreciate it. I know we all appreciate it, so thank you very much. Anybody else that would like to speak? If not, then we're going to close our petitioners and public hearings portion of the agenda and move on to a presentation from the Tobacco-Free Communities. And we have Nicole here. Is that right? Is Nicole here?
Yes, I am. How are you? So I'm Nicole Shuck, and I'm the Reality Check Coordinator and Youth Engagement Coordinator for Tobacco-Free Communities of Delaware, Otsego, and Schoharie County. I have here with me Bryson, and he's my Reality Check Youth. I would just like to present to you guys some information that we have from our local level evaluation that we do with our agency. This is Jennifer Hill, and she's also I'm the photographer. So she's also the Community Engagement Coordinator for the same grant, and we did our local level evaluation in Oneonta, and what we did is go to every active tobacco retailer in Oneonta and survey them about their products, their product placement, and the placement that they have relative to their tobacco products. There was about an 85% increase in items within 12 inches of tobacco products in Oneonta, and there also was an increase of about 68% of having retailers with more than 3/4 of their tobacco products behind the counter within 12 inches of the register. Oneonta has been working very hard. I've lived here for going on 3 decades. We're trying very hard to revitalize, make Oneonta a newer, while still historic place. I love living here, and it's just very interesting to see it on a professional level. I know that in 2019 we really started working hard on removing tobacco products from places with pharmacies. That would be like Rite Aid, Walgreens, CVS, but also big box stores like Walmart, Hannaford, and Price Chopper. So we lost 8 tobacco retailers in 2019, which is a big win for Oneonta and New York State. That's a lot of passive advertising that people under the age of 18 are not seeing anymore. Unfortunately, between 2019 and 2023, we have increased back to 7 more tobacco retailers with a total of 27 in Oneonta right now. I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. There are other communities like Niskayuna and Bethlehem in the Albany area right now that are putting caps on tobacco retailers and tobacco licenses, and I just wanted to hopefully bring that to you guys' attention. This is Bryson, as I'd like to introduce him, and he is a youth at Oneonta High School, and he would just like to let you guys know about some of the experiences that he has in Oneonta and at the Oneonta High School as a person under 18 experiencing passive advertising from the tobacco companies.
So yeah, as Nicole said, I'm Bryson. I'm very glad to be here. It's no surprise, and it's very apparent that having these numerous tobacco and vaping shops in Oneonta affects all members of the youth, especially in school, the school environment, particular Oneonta Middle School and High School. For example, there are people I know, and there are people in the school community who have easy access to purchasing these products, whether it be themselves, someone over the age of 18 or 21, or their parents. And those products certainly make their ways into schools, make their way through the halls throughout the day. And there's never a day in school that I go without walking into a restroom, seeing someone vaping, seeing someone using tobacco inside school, outside of school, walking on the streets, people under the age of 18. This is really something that affects not only the people who are doing it their health, but also the people who are not vaping, not doing this, but in return being peer pressured into doing this due to the availability of these stores. They see their friends doing it, they see people they know doing it, people on sports teams doing it. I know I'm a member of the varsity swimming team myself. There have been, in the past couple of years, people who have been active vapors on the team who get their materials from parents or friends who are, or older siblings even, who are over the age of 18 buying their products specifically in Oneonta. And there's been peer pressure from for even myself and a good group of friends of mine to take up these activities, to start vaping, to start smoking. So it's affecting not only the people who are doing it, but the people who are acquaintances, and even just in the school environment with these people. And this all can be really tied back to having these numerous shops in Oneonta and this increased availability in our community, which is really having a negative effect. Thank you.
Just to kind of follow up with what they're saying, the big problem is that we know from all the research and data that 90% of current smokers, adult smokers, began before they were 18. Fortunately, in New York State, because of the kind of work that has been done over the past 20 years, the rate of smoking among teens has plummeted. It's like a little over 2%, but vaping has spiked. And the tobacco industry, 95% of their marketing has to do with how they display tobacco products in retail. And it's no accident that there tends to be a higher density of tobacco retailers in lower income areas, and that the packaging of the tobacco products mimic candy, gum, even toys. And that's all deliberately designed to catch kids' attention from the time they're really small, so that they grow up being exposed to it a lot and considering it not just normal but desirable. We all are very aware of how addictive nicotine is, but I don't think we understand that once people start using tobacco before they're age 18 especially, it becomes very, very hard for them to quit, and not just because of how addictive nicotine is, but because of how normalized tobacco use is still. So those are the big concerns. And I know that Nicole and I have heard from Bryson and other students at Oneonta High School, they are having school staff monitor bathrooms all day long when school is open because there's just so much of students still being able to go in and vape, even though they're trying very hard to curb it, and it's such a burden on the schools to have to do that. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Yes.
So, Nicole, you mentioned that there was 27 retail spaces in Oneonta that are selling nicotine products or vaping products.
Yes.
When you said Oneonta, do you mean the city of Oneonta or city and town of Oneonta?
City and town of Oneonta.
How many are in the city of Oneonta specifically?
I think specifically it's 21.
Further questions? Yes.
Question for these young men. Take
Oh,
me.
sure.
First off, I just wanted to say thank you. I think I heard some of you guys talking in the parking lot, the travel distance that you had to come here, so I appreciate the fact that you took time out of your day to get here and speak. I guess my first question is, are you the only fraternities that have to get a special use permit? There's 4 of them?
There's a total of four or five Greek organizations that need to get one.
So these 2 are the only ones that found it important to actually come on the date that they were required to. Thank you. And then, how do you know how to give back to the community? Is there somebody, a representative from the city that comes to you and says, this is what we expect? I mean, how do you expect to know how your neighborhoods want to be treated and how you want to be treated?
I just kind of treat it like home. I don't want to live in a place that I would say like isn't doing well relationship-wise with your neighbors, or doesn't look so amazing. So we try to do the best we can. Cleaning up our streets. When we walk to, we live on Elm Street, so we could walk to get pizza. It's real close. We could walk here. Just picking up all the trash you see, and when it snows out, we shovel our neighbors' driveways and things like that, just to build a community. So, when our neighbor, who's, I want to say she's 80 years old, says, hey, like, I would love to see this in the community, that's something we can work on, something we can do together. And I think that's very important when it comes to giving back, is that relationship that you have with people and the people around you, so you can help better places. I'm not going to be here for my whole life. I'm not. Unfortunately, I'm not. But I want to leave it better than I found it, 2 years ago. So that's the best way I've seen fit.
I don't know how they expect to know how to live within their neighborhood unless they bring their self-experiences or self-thoughts to it. I thought maybe somebody from the city was going in. I know the fire department, the police department used to go in and talk about safety, but
Make a case for, it might be the council member for the neighborhood, the ward that these individuals reside in.
I thought at one point that's where we were headed, weren't we? Didn't we talk about that, Dave?
Well, I think so, but I know for a number of years, up until COVID, the fraternity, and then there was a sorority in my ward as well. We would do twice a year, we would have neighborhood cleanups. And there was one year we actually incorporated the 4th ward, and your organization took part in that also. But after COVID, we had to cancel it during COVID, and then shortly after COVID, the sorority in my ward was shut down, and the fraternity was having a lot of other issues, so we have not restarted this since. But it's usually through the ward.
Anything, I said,
Thank you.
certainly with
Sorry.
conversation. Okay, so we reopened, but I'm going to reclose this part of our public hearings piece and move on to an additional presentation we have from Jenny, our Finance Director, Jenny Lee, the 2022 financial report.
Thank you, Mayor. You will see on your desk that you've got 3 handouts. One is a memo, lengthy memo just full of great information, and we're going to just quickly go over it. There's also a printout of the PowerPoint that you're going to be seeing on the screen. And I also distributed a summary of our restricted reserves as of May 31st. So first, I just wanted to update you that the week of June 12th was the first week of the audit. The requirements for the audit this year have been greatly increased for testing purposes, so we're gonna have to have a second week, which will be the week of July 10th. Testing purposes is when they select expenses and revenues and just different aspects, payroll, different aspects of the financial makeup, and they test them, and now they just have to test quite a few more, and it just takes hours of work. But so far, the audit is going very well. So what I would like to do is just highlight the major revenue areas for the general fund. We'll start there, and I'd like to start out with the tax levy. So on the PowerPoint slide, you will see a graph, and it shows history going back to 2016 and up to 2023. Joe, you got it?
Yep, sorry.
Perfect, thank you. And you will see that the average levy since 2016 has been 4.8 million, and the average increase of 1.61, ranging from 2016 to 2023. And we know that this still is not enough to fund the budgets that we currently have for all the budget requests, but I just wanted to just show you the history since 2016, and we can just go forward there. We can extend this conversation when we start getting into the budget talks. And just to give you more information on the tax levy, the next screen will show you the tax warrant information. And as we know, we have an agreement with the county where we collect taxes between January and April. As of May 1st, any unpaid taxes gets turned over to the county. The city and the library are made whole on their warrant, and the county takes over the tax enforcement. So you will see from between 2018 and 2023, the number of parcels that were turned over for tax enforcement range from 156 to 210. So it's pretty consistent every year as far as the number and the dollar amount that gets turned over to the county.
Ginny, are you going to entertain questions as we go, or are you
Oh,
going to
sure,
wait till the end?
sure. You can, yeah, whenever.
So, I just had a few minutes to read this before we started the meeting tonight. But why is the unpaid school taxes mixed in with the total warrants?
That has to do with the state law. When the school tax collection ends in November, any of the unpaid school taxes gets turned over to the county and gets re-levied onto their next year's property tax bill. So the total warrant is made up of the city levy, the county levy, the library levy, and then any unpaid liens from the previous year, which includes school taxes, unpaid code enforcement bills, unpaid water and sewer bills. That all gets put back on, and then it goes into, that's part of the tax enforcement.
Okay.
So the warrant total, where you see the 7.9 up to the 8.6, that includes all of the levies. Any other questions? Okay. All right, and part of, as we know, part of our tax collection is we have pilot agreements. And in the narrative, I've listed we have 20 different pilot agreements. And I've also showed you the pilot revenues, and the visual will show you the amounts that we collect from each pilot agreement. Well, not each, but in total. Now, I just want to point out that we have a new pilot agreement coming up with the Deep Street Lofts. Once that takes effect, which will be after they receive their certificate of occupancy, it should affect the 2024 tax cap formula. When we start collecting more in pilot agreements, it reduces the amount that we can actually levy on the residents if we stay within the tax cap. Because what the tax cap formula will tell you, say it comes out to be $100,000, but if you're getting 50 from pilot, then you can only use the balance of 50 to spread across the residents.
Can I ask you a quick question about that?
Sure.
I don't mean to put you on the spot with this, but offhand, do you know approximately how many of these are kind of finishing within the next 5 years or so? If any?
I was just gonna say, I don't think there are any within the next 5 years, but I can verify that, Mark.
No, I don't think it's important to do. I just was curious how many of these are kind of near the end of that pilot, or are these, looking over, it seems like quite a few of these are relatively new within the past 5 or 6 years, but I was just wondering some of these others I'm not familiar with are.
Yeah, some of these are very long-standing, and they will be in effect as long as the property owner does not change.
Okay, good, thank you for that clarification.
Okay, so just to summarize the general fund, you will see on the pie chart on the screen, it just gives you a visual of where our revenues come from. But I just want to chat a little bit about the summary. 2022 adopted budget was $16.3 million. It got adjusted up to $17.9. How that happens is through the budget adjustments that we bring to council for approval, but it also gets adjusted by any outstanding purchase orders from the previous year. And I've given you the detail of the budget amendments that happened during 2022. $4,900 for the airport, the bucket truck, patrol car, the airport AWAS capital project, overtime cost, Newall Park baseball field, turnout gear for the fire department, the police department, cold storage, the ARPA funding, restricted donations, and code enforcement billings. And then also on the detail of the revenues, we had $17.6 million in revenues, and I showed you that the majority of the revenues are made up of the tax levy of 4.9, sales tax of 5.8, the town fire contract of almost 1.3, state revenue sharing of 2.2, and ambulance fees of $966,000. And I also provided the other categories, but I just wanted to mention the major revenue areas. The expenses for the general fund were about 15.9. And you will see that the salaries and fringe benefits make up almost 71% of those expenses. Salaries came in at 6.6, and fringe benefits came in at 4.5. And one thing that I want to point out is that these expenses are based on actual. It's not based on the budget. So when there's vacancies, these numbers are not to the full amount of the budget. And expenses are defined as goods and services received by 12/31, and outstanding encumbrances are defined as orders for goods and services that we have not received by the end of the year. So our sales tax history, you will see going from 2016 up to 2022, it's ranged from 4.2 million up to 5.8. And we are now seeing a 3-year trend where our sales tax is going to be over $5 million. So I believe that this is something that we can address in the 2024 budget. January through April of 2023, we've had, yes.
So just, I'm sorry, for clarity, Ginny, are the budget amendments for 22, those increases, are they figured into the total expenses that we're seeing on the next page?
Budget, if the goods and service was received by 12/31, they're in the expense total. If they were ordered but not received, then they're in the outstanding encumbrance total.
Other questions?
I'm just looking at these expenses and wondering how many of them actually got figured into the total expenses, that's all. Is there another way that we can figure this out, or?
So what?
I mean, it just looks like there's a delta spread of $1 million, right? This 17.9, right? The budget is 17.9 for the general, but
yeah, I'm gonna
your
go over,
expenses are 15.9.
yeah, I'm going to go over that in just a minute.
Okay, all right.
And if it doesn't answer your question, then we'll come back to it.
Thank you.
January through April of 2023 sales tax revenue we're just over 1.9 million. It's about $25,000 higher than last year, about 1.35%. So again, I think the trend so far this year is in line with last year, but we will see as time goes on. The next major revenue source is our ambulance. And you will see on the grid the bar chart, and it shows the dollars collected and the line chart shows the number of calls. The average number of calls per year is just over 2,000. The average net revenue is about 923,000. You will see that the average total billed is 2.3 million, but we only realize net revenues of 900, just over 900,000. The reason for that is mainly because of contractual allowances. Contractual allowances are defined as what the insurance company is willing to pay on the ambulance call. So for example, Medicare will only pay a certain dollar amount on ambulance care. The difference, we are not allowed to bill the patient for, except for the 20%, between 80 and 20%. Medicaid will only pay a certain dollar amount on ambulance. We're not allowed to bill the patient for the balance. Commercial insurances, because we participate with so many of them, Blue Cross will have a set fee for ambulance, and we only get paid up to that. And so there's a contractual allowance. So say, for example, 80% of the bill is $800, but Blue Cross is only going to pay $600. That $200 is called a contractual allowance. We're not allowed to bill the patient for that. But we are allowed to bill between the 80 and 100%. So the contractual allowances are just a legal mechanism that they have when you participate with the insurances. That's why you will see that the average contractual allowance per year is about 1.3 million that we're not able to collect or bill. Questions on that? Okay. Fire protection. Town, this is another major revenue source that we have. And you will see from 2016 to 2023, we went up to about 300,000 for the contract. This contract is based on, the billing is based on a formula for the current contract. Our contract expires with the town on the end of this year, and we are in negotiations now to renegotiate that contract. Okay, two other areas that I would like to point out in the general fund is our interest earnings. Budgets since 2019 were greatly reduced due to the decrease in federal interest rates. However, interest rates have greatly increased over the past year. And so we have, in 2022, we received a little over $52,000 in interest, or 2022. In 2023, through May, we've already received over 116,000. That's how much better the interest rates are moving along. And we've received over $89,000 of interest for our restricted funds. So our interest income this year will be much higher than anticipated, budgeted, and we'll see how the end of the year rate goes as far as the 2024 budget. Court and parking fines, you will see the history there. What I'm showing you here is that back in 2016, we had over 100,000 in parking fines. Then as fines went up and enforcement went up, parking fine revenues went down. And in 2022, you'll see that it has gone back up over the $100,000 mark. That is mainly due to the snow ticket increase when we moved the snow tickets up to $100. I would also like to point out that the court fines, we used to be able to budget about $125,000 a year in court fines. But after the criminal justice reforms, that money has almost all gone away. And I bring it up, I just want it to be in everybody's forefront at the state level, that if they go back to the previous regulations, it would solve many situations if you talk to the police chief. So, and I just wanted to let you know that the city has collected a little over $48,000 to date on parking fines. Now, state aid, this is an interesting graph. It's just a total straight line. We have not received increased AIM funding from the state since 2011. We do receive a little over $2.2 million. Yes.
Jeannie, I would imagine this is probably the case, but just to make sure, is this what other communities are experiencing? Is it this flat rate that's essentially stayed static for the past 10, 15 years?
I cannot confirm that because I haven't confirmed it with other municipalities, but in the readings that I have from the state controller's office is that there's been no changes in the formula. So the assumption would be that they're given the same, but I cannot confirm that.
I think it's pretty safe bet.
Okay, and as we talked about before, salaries and fringe benefits are a pretty high cost, a major cost of our budget. And what I did is I gave you information going back to 2016 between salary costs, overtime costs, health insurance costs, and retirement costs. And I want to point out that these figures are actual dollars, which do not include the cost if all of the vacancies were filled. And as you know, we are working with our healthcare task force to see what we can do as far as our health insurance costs, and as we get more information on that, we'll bring it to the council. Now, the general fund balance, at the end of 2022, the general fund balance, the unrestricted is 10.4 million. The restricted is 5 million, or a total of 15.6 million. And Len, this is where I think this will answer your question. So the fund balance is made up of 3 categories: restricted, non-spendable. Non-spendable are for prepaid expenses that we've already paid for, and we're going to experience the expense on our P&L at a later time. That would be like our prepaid retirement, if we have any type of inventory, which we do for our airport fuel, those type of categories are considered non-spendable. And then we have what we call our unrestricted funds. As of 2022, as I said, restricted was 5 million, unrestricted was 10.4 million. We have outstanding purchase orders that will go against those numbers because we've already committed those dollars for orders that we haven't received yet. And then our committed funds are for things that we've already appropriated in our next year's budget. So if we've appropriated 1.1 million of our fund balance, we want to make sure that that is clear to the reader that our real available unrestricted fund balance isn't the 10.4, but it's 9 million. So the unrestricted fund balance did realize a surplus of $1 million at the end of 2022. It went from 9.3 million up to 10.4 million. However, due to the 2023 budget appropriating over $1 million of our unrestricted funds to balance the 2023 budget, I would like to at this time not recommend using restricting any of the unrestricted funds, you know, as we normally do, and we will take a certain amount and put it into the public safety reserve or put it into the highway equipment reserve. I would like to keep that $1 million in the unrestricted fund to absorb any possible deficit that we may realize in 2023. In the fall, when we're working on the budget, and I've projected the year-end fund balances, if I feel that there is sufficient funds to cover that appropriated fund balance for 2023, I will come back with a recommendation to the council to consider transferring funds from the unrestricted funds to the restricted. That's my recommendation at this time, and you can ask me any questions or give me any feedback on how you feel about that recommendation.
How does that look in the budget to earmark that million though?
I'm sorry?
How's that gonna look in the budget you wanna earmark the million within the unrestricted, so how does that look for us in the budget?
You've already done it. You've already earmarked it in the 23 budget. You've already appropriated $1.1 million in the 23 budget. If indeed we have a deficit at the end of 23, then that's going to reduce the unrestricted fund balance. But instead of it reducing it from 9 million down to 8 million, we'll be reducing it from 10 million down to 9 million. Okay?
Further questions?
And as we know, our fund balance policy is that our unrestricted fund balance be at least 35% of our next year's budget. Currently, the unrestricted fund balance is over 57% of the adopted 2023 budget. This statistic indicates a strong financial condition, but because of our budget challenges, especially when we are fully staffed, if we ever get to a fully staffed port, we still have to be very conservative in our budgeting. The main reasons for the increase in the unrestricted fund balance are due to the following. Two of them Biggest is because our sales tax came in over $960,000 more than we had anticipated in the budget. And that was the second year in a row that the sales tax went up over the 5 million mark. Also, we had savings of salary and fringe benefits of $755,000 due to vacancies. So it's because of those two numbers that we were able to experience the surplus in the unrestricted fund balance. I also listed some other numbers there just so you would see the detail. Okay, that's all I have on the general fund right now. Do you have any questions?
Jenny, I'm going to take a quick moment and let the folks who have made the trip here and have spent the time, I'm going to give you this opportunity to make a decision. You can either stay and continue to watch this process, or we won't think any less of you if you decide that this is an opportunity for you to leave. It's your call, just to let you know that that is your option. And Jenny, I'll let you continue.
Enjoy your summer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any from council?
Thank you, Mayor.
I was getting a full-on of their pained looks.
I know, finances can be so boring. Okay, any other further questions right now on the general fund? I know this is a lot of information, and the information that I gave you in your packets is very detailed, and take time to absorb it, study it, email me any questions that you might have. But I think it's a good start and kickoff for the 2024 budget process to give you all of this history.
I think, I'm going to interrupt again, I think that's a really good point that you're making in this moment. The expectations of the council here, they're most, the priority expectation of council is the fiduciary responsibilities, ensuring that they know everything that they're looking at, can recognize the numbers because they've had an opportunity to kind of cogitate on them. And so what we're doing is providing an overview with an expectation that people will look at these numbers, and then we'll have further conversations
sure,
where
absolutely.
those numbers start to either generate questions or comfort. Go ahead.
And I know that this can be overwhelming and somewhat boring for the audience, but it is a legal responsibility for me to provide the council members this information. Even bond counsel will ask me for copies of the reports that I provide to the council members. So just realize the importance of this activity. Okay, the water fund. The water fund, their budget was about $2.8 million for adopted, and it got amended to $3.2 million. And this was amended by encumbrances of $326,000, and then we also did a budget amendment to fund replacement and rebuild of water meters of $80,000. The revenues totaled about 2.9, and the expenses about 2.8. Outstanding purchase orders at the end of the year were 224,000, with 56,000 being funded by the reserves. And on the
Excuse me, Jenny, did you mean 24,000 or
You said 200.
no, I dropped a 2 there. It's 224,000. And I wanted to give you some history on the metered water sales going back to 2016. I separated it out between non-college customers and the college customers. That obviously is Hartwick and SUNY. And you will see from 2016 to 2022, our non-college sales were 1.4, and they're now up to 2.1. And our college sales were 424, and they're now back up to about 539. You will see that because of this, our rate increases, you will see that the slow and steady approach is starting to take effect. And a requirement for, at the end of the year, is to come up with what they call an allowance for uncollectibles. Because the city does not have a mechanism to re-levy the unpaid town water bills, we have to book an allowance for what we think is not going to be collected. At the end of 2022, there's an allowance of $124,000 for, which basically is made up of 3 town accounts that have some pretty large bills. Because we sell outside of our boundaries, the town is out of our jurisdiction, so we are not able to be levied onto their town bills. The water fund balance, the unrestricted is a little over $519,000, with the restricted being a little over $522,000. We have outstanding purchase orders at the end of the year, so the available balance is net of $822,000. And the water fund did realize a surplus of about $114,000 for 2022, and again, this indicates that the water rate slow and steady increase is starting to reflect the growth in the water fund. We have a long ways to go, but it is starting to appear into the numbers. The water fund balance for compared to the 2023 budget is about 35% of the unrestricted, in total about 35%, with the unrestricted being 17%, but the available unrestricted is just under 12%, and that number is just much too low. And then also in 2021, $370,000 was contributed to the Catella Well Repair Project from the general fund, and that amount was to be repaid in 3 years. The forestry sales that we are having on the watershed property, so far we have collected about $351,000 in gross sales. That money is going to be used, council approved the motion to pay this debt back to the general fund. Sewer fund, adopted budget was 2.2 and a modified budget was 2.6, and we had the budgeted amendments with the 2021 purchase orders of about $75,000. We transferred $178,000 to the Garden Place reconstruction capital project and $124,000 to the wastewater treatment plant upgrade project for the BAN payment. Revenues were 2.5, expenses were about 2.3. Outstanding purchase orders were about $101,000, with $15,000 coming from reserves. The sewer billing history, again, broke it out between non-college sewer rents and versus college sewer rents. And you will see again the growth of 1.2 million up to 1.4 for non-college, and 477 up to 409. And again, it indicates that our price increases are starting to take effect. Another large revenue for the sewer is our agreement with the town. We have a 30-year agreement with the town. And I just gave you the history of 2016 to 2022. This is formula-based. We take samples. The wastewater treatment plant does a lot of sampling once a month. They do a lot of measurements. Those average measurements is how we calculate the formula. We take our debt payments for the wastewater treatment plant. We take our expenditures for their operating, and we apply the formula to the cost. And the town usually pays us around September for their bill. They do their sewer collection billing in the summer, and then we get paid in early fall. Another large activity down at the wastewater treatment plant we call minor sales other. This is when septic waste is accepted from the haulers, and that is billed based on weight. And you will see the activity is now back up to about a 2017 level. The sewer fund balance, that was 1.2 million of unrestricted and about 511,000 of restricted. And again, we had in total 1.8, but available of 1.6 after you account for the outstanding purchase orders and or the commitments that we have done. The sewer fund balance is much stronger than the water, but we still want to continue the growth. We have a second phase of the wastewater treatment plant upgrade. And also at the end of 2022, the EFC long-term financing of $6.7 million was finalized, and we have a 30-year term, 0% loan to repay at $224,980 per year.
Can we make earlier payments on that?
I would have to check with bond counsel on that. I don't remember the terms.
We can, but usually
but usually with a 0% interest rate in a 5% or 6% inflationary environment. By not paying it back, we're constantly paying back in less expensive, in inflated dollars. So it's usually, if we don't pay it off, we essentially make 5%. So all the money that she puts into an interest-bearing account that's earning us 5% is money that we get to keep. Whereas if we pay it off early, then we'll be losing the interest that would be earned on it. So we generally, and there's also underlying, sorry to go on like this, but I don't get a chance to talk about it very often, is the general thought that it's best to pay out long-term structural bonds over the entire life of the project, because if you pay it off early, what's happening is you're front-loading your current taxpayers who are paying for the service. Then the future taxpayers get it for free, because the past taxpayers have been taxed, and their tax money has been used to pay what could have been used for other services. Whereas if you continuously pay back the structural refunding during the period of time during the useful life of that structure, then in fact it more equally treats the taxpayers throughout the 20, 30, 40 years of the benefit.
Those were really good points.
That's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Interesting concept of paying with money that's got more value now than it will in the future.
Exactly.
It's a very pessimistic attitude to have about our economy.
Or a smart way to pay back.
Realistic, yes. All right, with that.
Yeah, and then also, just so you know, Len, EFC will come back to us to refinance after a certain number of years if the interest rate, of course, in this case, we wouldn't need to because the interest rate is at 0 rate, but previous EFCs, they've actually refinanced to save us hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest whenever they were able to. Usually you have to hold the debt for so many years before you're eligible to do that.
I think we did that last year, right?
Yeah. Any other questions on the sewer? OPT. What I want to talk about in OPT, it's a little different, and we will need a further detailed discussion for OPT during the 2024 budget process. But the enterprise fund is supported primarily through what is called the Statewide Mass Transportation Operating Aid, or STOA. And they're also supported with fares and contracts for bus services. The STOA aid is based on passengers and mileage statistics. We get reimbursed 68 cents per passenger and $1.15 per mile. And OPT has been awarded a Section 5311 CARES grant totaling $1.1 million with an expiration, without an expiration date at this point. And to date, we have not drawn any of the CARES money because we had a surplus within the OPT fund, and I'll explain that in just a moment. But the 2023 budget, we're expecting to use about $477,000 of the CARES funding. And a requirement of the STOA is an annual report detailing all the STOA eligible expenses and eligible revenues. And the report determines if the city is eligible for any federal 5311 operating aid. Because of the surplus that OPT has held for a number of years, we have not been eligible for any of the operating aid. And I gave you a summary which started back in 2015, and we have finally exhausted the final part of the surplus, the $44,000 in 2023. The net surplus, every year I would have to file a report and a letter indicating to DOT what we were going to do with the surplus, and they would have to give us approval to hold on to it, because they could always request those monies to be returned to them. And where the majority of the surplus came from was due to the adoption of a new formula that the state did back in 2019. They also changed the timing of one of their payments, which we got this huge payment of about, I want to say it was between $300,000 and $400,000, which we had budgeted for the next budget year. So they turned the time up on us a little bit, so we got permission from them to carry that forward. And according to the New York State Department of Transportation website, it is the mission of New York State to ensure that their customers who live and work and travel in New York State have a safe, efficient, balanced, and environmentally sound transportation system. And they see it as a viable transportation options is essential for both economic sustainability and livability in their communities. the New York State takes public transportation extremely serious because they know that it benefits the most in need and also it helps in many ways as far as less congestion, less cars on the road, and just more efficient traveling. Oneonta has always been held in high regard with the DOT. Every time I go to a meeting or a conference, Oneonta is always complimented, and I just want to pass that along. We've had excellent transit managers for many years and has served all of the passengers in the community very well. But since the pandemic and due to the decrease in the number of college students on campus, our passenger statistics have decreased. And providing public transportation is essential to the community, as I just mentioned. Therefore, it is essential that we continue to provide the service and expand our ridership. So you will see here up on the screen, it's not in your printout, but it's on here. We went back to 2016 and 2018. And you will see that the total passengers were over 650,000 between college and non-college passengers. And then 2019, 16, 18, 19, then the pandemic hit. So it greatly dropped down to the 200,000s. And now we're gradually getting back up there. We're now at about 360,000, but we still have a ways to go to get back up to that 600,000 mark. So we need to investigate how we're going to increase our ridership. And you will see that the biggest drop was in the college activity. The students, first of all, we have about 1,000 less students on campus. Is that correct, Mayor? And if they used to be riding the bus 3 times a day, so that greatly decreased our passenger count for the SUNY passengers. And then also we saw that the night activity coming down for the nightlife also went greatly down during COVID. So I just thought it was important to share those statistics with you, and we will be expanding this conversation in our 2024 budget.
Can you share that slide with us, Jenny, please?
Yep, I will.
It's in the slide packet.
It's not in the narrative, but it's in the.
I thought you said we didn't get it. Oh.
It's just not in the narrative. And then the last thing I just wanted to talk about was capital projects. You will see in your memo that we listed 25 capital projects that the city has been either involved in 2022 or 2023. And the ones in bold have been completed, but I just thought this was a good informational list for you to know what our crews have been busy doing. Now, as I said before, there's a lot of information in these packets, there's a lot of history. Any questions, feel free to email me or Greg, and we will get back to you, and we'll share your question and answer with the whole council. But I believe that this is a good kickoff for what we're going to start in July. The second meeting in July is when we start the 2024 budget process. I'm hoping by that time that I will also have an update for the first 6 months of 2023.
So again, we're going to be looking at the second meeting in July. And I'm going to ask if we could just, if we're able to provide to council a few days or ideally a week ahead, whatever kind of numbers that they may need to look at in that moment when they're home and they have the time, so that when they come here, they're as informed as they can be. I really appreciate the effort.
I will try my best, Mayor. I've got a lot to do between now and then, but I will try my best.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. All right, and if there are any additional questions for Jenny before we shut down this part of the agenda? Very good. And if I can find my agenda again, there it is.
Visuals are great.
I will give credit to Joe. He did all of the PowerPoint presentation for me.
Yeah, rescued us just now, so thank you very much. All right, so we'll look now to our board and commission reports and our board of public service and.
Crap. I forgot. Want to go to the next one, Mark, while I'm trying to look for the stuff? I'm sorry.
That's fine. We'll move to landmark and historic preservation. We're, at this point, I think, do we still have Steve here? Okay. I don't know that there's anybody in this room that might be able to report on that. So we'll go back to you, Scott.
All right, I got it. My apologies. So we met on, I believe it was the 7th. And we had 3 Lewis Ave come in front of us. The owner wanted the garage to be declared unsafe because they wanted to take it down. That was granted. It's always easier when the owner comes through to ask for it. 19 Columbia Street. The owner did not show up to the meeting, but he did ask that the shed be declared unsafe to be taken down, which that was granted as well. 268 Chestnut Street. That was declared an unsafe garage. That's ordered to be, they ordered that to be secured, cleaned out, and the owner was asking if that could be done, be taken down by the end of August. That's what they granted for that, was to be taken down at the end of August. 47 Market Street, as we know, that was declared unsafe. That was ordered to be secured. 65 Elm Street, that was a trash removal. They appealed it. The person did not show up, so the board denied the appeal. 253 Chestnut Street, again, that was a trash removal appeal. They were saying that they did not have access to the property. That one was also denied. And then they went through the normal water bill appeals, penalty motions, and how that all works. I'm not going to bore with it. If you have questions, I'm going to say ask Dave, because I'm not sure, I'm 100% sure how that all works. Even listening to him, it's pretty interesting, to say the least. And then they had a water appeal for 41 Union Street. That appeal was denied because they ended up having a leak that it was found out to be, so that's why they denied it. And they had a 15 Ann Street, they had a water bill appeal. That one, they did find out that they did adjust a little bit because they found out that we actually had a bad meter. So they adjusted it. They worked with Ginny. I don't even know how this works, but they worked with Ginny. They come up with they got some type of scale that they can come up with, and that's how they figure out how to do it. So.
Questions for Councilmember Harrington? Okay, thank you, Scott. And we'll move on to Councilmember Falco and our Public Works Commission.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Our Public Arts Commission finally met again the 14th of this month, Wednesday. All commissioners were present except Commissioner Barlow. They started with some new business. Chair Jim Maloney decided to step down from that role, and so they elected a new chair. Andrew Bichola will now be the chair. Congratulations, Andrew. They also discussed crosswalk and sidewalk art and kind of went over it with the city clerk to establish a process for how those kinds of proposals are vetted, and so she's going to be working on that. Same thing with any kind of public art, murals and sculptures, that kind of stuff. opportunities for artists. Yet it was noted that these grants also need to have some kind of larger community involvement, so they're considering that, or promoting that. There's a few murals there's some interest in. Foothills is now in favor of having a mural on their building. There's also the public safety building that wants to have a mural. So they're kind of going to begin a process of request for proposals and then starting to vet that kind of artwork. Also talked about utility box wraps or painting utility boxes, same kind of thing. And then lastly, I've been kind of looking into a way that we could preserve that roundhouse mural painting that was in the arcade. So I just kind of gave a little bit of an update on that, but there's still kind of a lot of work to do to see how much it's going to cost and what's required of it. And that's it.
Greg, I want to just piggyback on that mural.
Oh, there was one more thing.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Huntington Library, they're entering their phase 2 of those developments, and so that's going to have a possibility of some kind of public art sculpture. So we talked about that, and Jim Maloney said that they might talk to David Hayes about possibly acquiring one of his father's sculptures for that purpose. And they're going to invite Tina instead to the next meeting. That's it.
Okay. Before I open up, I do want to follow up on the mural at the Roundhouse that we had hired somebody to photograph. Do we know if they get to that?
Yeah, that was done.
So we have a photograph that was pieced and so we have something that we can reprint for almost any size.
Okay.
As we have this other one, I guess, rolled up someplace.
Yeah, I think the discussion is about how, to maybe store it more professionally for the longer term or restore it.
Right, and like, do we want to restore that painting and maybe have it framed for?
I'd be really interested in seeing the photographer's work on this, on what we had in the walkway, because I think it would look great, especially if you could change the size of it. Yes, Dave.
I would totally agree. My question though is, have they reached out to the Fenimore at all about keeping that painting?
No, you mean as acquiring it as part of like their collection?
No, but on ways to,
conserve it?
yes, because they do.
I've been doing I've been doing a lot of the legwork on that, and so I spoke with the artist to figure out what kind of materials to use. I spoke with somebody up at Golden Paints to kind of get an idea of what's involved, and he gave me a couple suggestions of like ways you can find conservators in your area, and so I did reach out to one locally. I think she might be kind of Buffalo area, and to see kind of like what it costs to have it. There's some damage to the varnish on the top, and it's because it's been rolled up. It has waves in it, so I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, Cooperstown Graduate Program through SUNY Oneonta, they have a historic preservation course.
Oh, okay.
The person to contact would be Cynthia Falk, Dr. Cindy Falk.
Okay.
And it might even be a project we could partner with the graduate program on. The students there regularly get a couple projects a year on the National Register, as well as do preservation plans and housing plans and things like that. So that might be a good contact.
That would be really excellent. Thank you.
But the Fenimore is, just so you're aware, the Fenimore is known for doing restorations and preservation of paintings locally.
Okay.
So I think there's a wealth of
Great.
minds that can help.
That's great to know. Thank you.
So Jenny Williams, if you're watching, we got this in hand.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions about the Public Arts Commission meeting? Okay, well, thank you very much. And we'll move on to David. I'm going to ask you to take this, and we'll see where this goes in the future. But David, yeah.
Would you like to hear about the Housing Commission?
Oh, did I skip over you? I'm sorry. Yeah,
that's okay.
Yeah, I might want to hear about the Housing Commission.
So
please.
in my panic, I ran out of ink at 6:45 6:45. So I took a picture of my computer screen, so that's what I'll be reading off of. The Housing Commission met on Wednesday. The commission was presented with two presenters. The first one was a very exciting report on senior housing. The Senior Housing Work Group does have a report they're going to forward to council in the very near future, I would imagine. And they did a lot of legwork on what seniors need in the community, what they want, what they're looking for. A lot of data collection. They did surveying. They looked at national housing models, did focus groups. And the biggest takeaway they had was that seniors want to stay independent and alone at home. They had 9 options. The very bottom of their list was number 9, I believe, was leaving home, and number 8 was having their kids coming back. Apparently most seniors want that. So the needs are definitely something that we've talked about a lot in Oneonta's more housing, more affordable housing. But they've included in the report three major areas. Unfortunately, due to the size of the problem, not everything can be addressed by the city by itself. It might require county or state aid. This would be expanding funding opportunities through grants and tax incentives, exploring options such as cooperative and shared services. A lot of seniors are having difficulty not necessarily paying for people to help them out, but just finding people to help them out. So the idea, which will be in the report, is of perhaps paying a fee to the city and seeing what we can do to spread our services to those seniors that need it. And then finally, if there's any way that can be encouraged, newly built housing for single level homes in the 800 to 1200 foot category would be great. Condos, as someone who's not necessarily senior, on the other end of the spectrum, that would be great for my bracket as well. A lot of young professionals are looking for that kind of housing. So that report should be coming pretty soon, Mayor, I would imagine.
We're looking at the second meeting in July.
Okay, so hopefully next month. So that was the first meeting. The second was Will Rivera from OFO presented with some exciting news. OFO did an ARPA application for funding and received $800,000 to immediately, it's called Rapid Rehousing, for the unhoused in Oneonta and the surrounding area. This funding is Will really thinks it's going to go a long way in helping with a lot of the folks in our area that are really struggling with housing. He really reiterated that this is a great start, but it's something that just about every single community in the country is experiencing. All the hotels and motels are at capacity, as are the shelters. But this money could help up to 60 individuals per year, which would be a great way to help the community in Oneonta, both housed and unhoused. And that was the majority of the meeting. I unfortunately was unable to attend due to family commitments, but I did watch the YouTube presentation and reached out to Chair Baskin to let me know if there's anything else I should know, and I think that was what was covered at the meeting. So.
Before I open this up to council, can I ask, Will Rivera's presentation, was he referencing the HUD grant, or was this entirely different money? The OFO and Will's program specifically received about $750,000 plus dollars. So we're talking about the same.
I believe so. I can double check though.
That's fine. I'll see.
But he was really excited about it, and it sounds like it's going to be very good use.
Other questions?
Sorry, so for that grant, OFO was about $800,000 for 60 people?
That's what he calculated, about 60 people could be helped with it. Yeah.
Okay. All right, very good, thank you, Luke, and we'll move on now with Dave, sorry for the false start, to the legislative committee.
Yes, we met on June 12th, and we had one item for discussion, just demolitions. We do have an ordinance that has been written by our code office, and I can give you a couple items on it. Let's see, a permit will not be required for the demolition of a structure that is 144 square feet or less, 145 square feet to 199 square feet. The code office will be able to issue the permit without the planning commission getting involved. Site plan will be needed if the demo is for a greater than 200 square foot building, and then so they will have to go to the planning commission. And a permit will be required for any building that is on the National Register of Historic Places or a building located in a national or local historic district. And this should be ready for the first meeting in July for the common council, so it's coming.
Which we're presuming is the 5th, by the way. We haven't talked about it.
Okay.
Presumably it'll be the 5th. Is that it? That's all? That's it? Any questions on this from anybody? Yes, Mike?
This is legislative, right?
Yes.
So are you guys still working on the public arts, that document? Is that done, or?
This is the only thing we've had for the last couple of meetings. It's demolitions.
What are we waiting on? I'm just trying
Honestly,
to catch up.
I would have to
You're
go
looking at
back.
me like I'm looking at you probably.
Yeah, I would have to go back through my notes. I think that we can probably restart whatever discussions we've had.
Do we know where this is in the workbook?
Has
Public
a
comments.
finalized final draft been presented from the Public Arts Commission? I know the staff had provided some comments back. Was that, so there was a final draft, do you know, Emily, that was provided to legislative? I don't.
I believe so.
Okay, I'm not sure. So I guess that's great.
So you'll have some.
I'd have to go back and look. I honestly don't remember. If it was a while ago.
It may have been because I feel like the last time we met was in February, so I feel like it was sent out then. So it's been a little while, so maybe it just got lost in the next meeting.
Further questions? Okay, very good, thank you. All right, moving on to the special meeting of the Quality of Life and Infrastructure Committee. Back to you, Dave.
Okay, we held a special meeting on the 13th. This was due to the DEC providing us additional details that we needed to take into account when developing a recommended plan to the full council. To stay on our timeline, we thought it best to have a short meeting outside of the normal scheduled meeting time. So, just to give a general overview of what we've talked about, it's a 3-phase plan. The first phase will include a data collection program, property fence code review, marketing for deer hunting on city property where it's already allowed, including applying for a deer management assistance program or a DMAT permit on that property, which is generally, it's up around the reservoir. A robust education program for the public, research and review of SUNY Binghamton's deer management program, beginning discussions with owners of properties of significance within the city about participating in a DMAT program for 2024, and council discussions for DMAT permits for additional city parcels in 2024. And most of that first phase will occur over the next year. The second phase will include a review of ongoing data collected and possibly an additional DMAT program within the city limits. And the third phase will include, again, a review of ongoing data collected with a possible deer damage permit program within the city. But I'd say the second phase and the third phase are not necessarily guaranteed. It's really depends on the data that we collect and if the numbers of deer are reducing or not.
And where does this land? This goes back to the click and then to council?
So right now, it's gone back to the task force, and unfortunately, I did not include one small piece of this, I realized today, in my original email to the task force. So I sent that out this afternoon so they would see that the DMAT permit is in phase 1 as well. And they're supposed to get any feedback back to us before next Monday when we meet again. And then if we're all in agreement of the committee, then we'll pass it on to the council.
Okay, so we'll hopefully see something by the month of July on this. Terrific. 30 years in the making. All right. And that's all of the click?
That's the only thing we discussed, unless I missed
any other agenda
Yeah.
items?
Unless I missed anything. I figure I've got 3 other
Anybody
people
have
on
any
the line.
questions or comments? All right. Dave, thank you very much. And we'll move on to Finance and Human Resources Committee. Scott, can you pick this up, or who was
I
there?
think Dave was actually gonna pick it up.
I thought I said I'd back you up.
Oh, I thought you said you were gonna pick it up.
Well, why don't you
I
take
have-
the lead and he'll back you up.
I have notes. I don't know how thorough they are. Katie does a very thorough job with her notes. We had a number of topics. Let's see here. One is the camera van upfitting bid award, which is on tonight's agenda. Also, the transit mix concrete bid award. We had one bid, which was Otsego Ready Mix. There's varying prices involved. I didn't write them all down, but this is going to be used for sidewalks, curbs, catch basins. Let's see, capital project budget for sidewalk and curb replacement. We need to create this. Am I stating this correctly, Greg? $110,000. It's funded through state CHIPS money. And then we had a discussion about the airport partial parallel taxiway project. This is at the opposite end of the airport. It's grant funded. We're looking to hold off on this project for now. I believe that was a phase one of a two-phase project, and the city match is $200,000. And we will temporarily lose access to two hangars, I believe, because the plan is to rebuild the hangars. But for now, we're gonna hold off on this project. Let's see here. We had a discussion about an airport consultant and an RFQ. There's an agreement with a current airport engineer, or the agreement with a current airport engineer is expiring, so we need to go back out for a new RFQ. This is done every 5 years, and Councilman Carson was saying that it may be worthwhile considering changing that to 3 to 5 years instead. And there was talk of a City Hall business hour survey where we want to get feedback from people that come into City Hall to see what hour changes should or could be done. We discussed paid parking briefly, and the new free shuttle that there was a discussion about how that is being paid for currently. And how did I do? What I missed?
You did absolutely great. The only thing I'd add with the City Hall business hour surveys, we brought up that unlike most municipalities, our offices do not close for lunch. They actually have somebody at the window to be able to cover that. And that's what people really should take into consideration, is that we don't really shut down during the day.
Any further comments, additions, subtractions, division? Okay, well, thank you very much, and I think that's the last time I'm gonna call on you no, it's not, in fact, because I can see we don't have a charter review committee because that was canceled, correct?
Yes, lack of
So, Dave,
This is the Dave
go
show
back to
tonight.
you. We've decided to add in, because we have a very robust ad hoc committee system. We've got, I think, 15, maybe 16 committees working with hundreds and change people. So I think it's important that the council starts to hear some of the progresses that are being made by some of these groups, and Dave has agreed to form the liaison function for the Performance Venue Task Force. And with that, I'll let you go on the meeting.
Yeah, I think it's important that we report on this one, and this one in particular, it's kind of near to my heart here, because I remember Dick Miller talking about this years ago, talking about having a performance venue in Motor Plaza. So Greg and the mayor and myself met with Al Kleinman and Rafael Saison the other day, and the discussion is not one but two performance venues that they're looking for. Let's see here. One would be in Muller Plaza, one would be down in Neowa Park. And the smaller one in Muller Plaza will be named after Al Galadoro. And there were some renderings of what it could potentially look like based on what other communities have done. As of right now, it would be located in the corner between the hotel and the restaurant because that's where the power is, so we don't need to move the power. And that was always a huge issue in the past. Looking at something with a shed roof, with a very low stage but storage underneath, there would be a back wall, lights would be built into it. You're talking roughly 16 by 20 foot stage. Now the one in Neowell Park is going to be named after Jerry Jeff Walker, and that's going to be a much bigger venue. I don't want to get into the details because the details really are in the beginning phases, but they're going to be doing some consulting with some firms to help inform the bidding process. What happens with Al Galadoro stage is also going to help build that process for the other much larger event stage. So as of right now, we had an action plan moving forward, which I think is also important. It shows that there's progress and things are slowly moving forward and not getting stuck anywhere. Nobody's spinning their wheels. So I think that some exciting things are in store for Oneonta.
And I'll just say for the council members who may be wondering, while we do have a fairly robust line that we've dedicated to this from our ARPA funding, it's going to cost more than that. And so FOF and various other partners are lining up to see how they might be able to augment the funding of this so that the city is only out of pocket that which we've already presumed and voted on being out of pocket, which is the ARPA funding and everything else. So there are good people who are energized about this and involved, and they really are making progress. It's good to see. They'll come back to council with a presentation at one point or another when there's something to show council.
Sounds good.
So thank you very much. Any questions for Dave on this?
Now, Katie Councilmember Parishu is not here today. She's the chair of the ad hoc group that is one of our three legs of the stool for our marketing effort. But I can speak to a couple of things that are happening with that. I guess probably the most important thing to be aware of is the relationship, and Len, you were a part of this early on, relationship that we've got with the Cooperstown All-Star Village.
It's exactly the opposite of what we've had before. We have a real partner there. We have now on every opening day, we have Destination Oneonta, augmented by various other volunteers, are setting up a little pop-up. You guys have probably seen it on social media. It's the Destination Oneonta tent, am I right? No, it's the Oneonta.
It's the city of Oneonta.
Yes, and it presents very well. And then beyond that, they'll wander around and let people know that we're here, and then people come by to the tent and pick some things up from the tabling. So this is every opening day, and the idea of the engagement marketing task force, our overarching goal is to create, again, I think, Len, you might have been in that conversation where the CEO said if you can provide a couple of days, evenings would be ideal, of entertainment, engagement options, boy, we will send our people here. We will send our people to the city of Oneonta. And so I know in speaking with the mayor of Cooperstown, Mayor Tillebaugh, she says, I can't even get a brochure in the Dreams Park, but we literally are setting up. Now, we have recently lost our parking garage. So, it would seem almost counterintuitive to be trying to bring in the numbers of people that we are trying to bring in, and we are. Ginny was showing us how sales tax is impactful to our overall budget, among other things that folks will bring in terms of a more robust and energized Main Street makes that much more attractive and likely they're going to be able to attract people to it year round and potentially even as one of our assets as we're marketing to folks. So So it's really important that we, in some fashion, get out ahead of the narrative that is starting to lose some traction in the community, which is we don't have any parking. We in fact do have parking. And so beyond that, what we have is a couple hundred spaces in Newell Park and a shuttle service. Now, when you go to a community and you're interested in, you don't know the community, and you're interested in maybe visiting that community, and somebody hands you something that says, we have a free shuttle service, and it takes you through the park, and you can see, the pickleball court, and the, could you pass these around, please? Three, that way. So, we put together a map, literally this is hot off the press. I had to kind of, I had to kind of deal with the fact that there's no way I was going to be able to do quality art here, given the time frame. We just need to get it out to people. So the Cooperstown All-Star Village has a policy where they do not want flyers handed out because they don't want papers flying all around. So I got with Rick just a little while ago, and I said, Rick, it's really important to us that we send people to our Demuskie Field parking area, and that they take the shuttle and they spend the day in Oneonta. And we gave them reasons, kind of like a little touristy map. Here's some fun things that you can do to see. And so this is the current iteration of our shuttle route. And so I said, Rick, can we figure this out for tomorrow? And we'll look at it down the road as what we need to do. And he said, whatever you need. So we've got a couple hundred that Monty printed up that will be handed to Destination Oneonta in the morning, and they will deliver these and hand them to folks at the Cooperstown All-Star Village on their opening day. So we should see some ridership. We should see those parking lots being used. We should see Newell Park being taken advantage of by people who will discover the jewel that it is, and again, that's a good thing for us. And hopefully they'll spend some time in the downtown section. So we have that, and then kind of concurrent with that, while we have the engagement marketing folks looking at all the things that they can bring people in to do. As you know, the council voted in, I think it was only last council meeting, seems a million years ago, to allow us to bring Fordu in as kind of our concierge, or our Muller Plaza ambassador. And in the Muller Plaza now we have 4 tables, 16 chairs, 4 umbrellas set up as basically a space that we want people to hang out. Just a great place. We've got Wi-Fi, free Wi-Fi, that our new smart system provides. So you can sit there and do your computering or you just hang out. So what we have on Thursday, I believe it is, which is 2 days from now, we ordered and will receive these sleeves that are 8.5, 14 for depth that you can slide menus into. And you've seen them in restaurants, right? So they're plastic, and they'll mean that we don't have to continually print things. So we have a cover. These will be on all of the tables. So the cover says, it's a menu. It's not really a menu. Open it up, and every single restaurant in the city of Oneonta is listed. Their telephone numbers, their addresses, their websites, and a QR code next to them, so that people who are sitting there in the plaza can just snap their phone and maybe order something. My hope is that someone out there is entrepreneurial and sees an opportunity to be Oneonta's own little DoorDash in the Muller Plaza. So someone should think of that. But this winds up being a really nice congregate space that we can promote and that will entice people in. So that's engagement marketing in general. They have much more that they're working on, but that gives you some sort of sense of some of the stuff that's being done. So I should also tell you too, what the heck, as long as I got the stuff in my pocket here. Again, I'll give you 4 of these. We've been banging things out just because they need to get banged out. So we have a parking map. You've all seen it, I expect. And what we've done is Greg wrote some copy for it that provides some specificity around some of the regulations, et cetera. But it gives people a pretty good idea of where they can find parking. And it does not look to be the daunting task that it's been presented as being. You can find parking. And I can tell you anecdotally that, there are always spots. We'll see what happens with that. But in any case, so I've been hand delivering these to all the merchants, and the restaurants are starting little piles on their counters, and then we'll start to get these out and about. That's not specifically engagement marketing, but as long as us in the map-taking business, I provide that to you guys as well. Which moves me to recruitment and retention. That's the third leg. Actually, Len sits on that task force, is the Welcome Home Task Force. And that's a really important piece of their overall marketing effort, because we're trying to recruit people to come in, and we want them to get integrated into the community right away. We want them to be successful right away, know the resources, know the people, be able to kind of hit the ground running as Oneontans. It's a real need. So that committee will present sometime down in the future, but I know August 12th, they're actually looking at doing something on Main Street. We talked about the fact that they've done something at Southside Mall, and we'd like to see that happen on, in downtown proper. And so they're going to be looking at part of a street closure on Deet Street, I believe it is, on August 12th for another reception. But getting finally to the recruitment and retention piece, everyone knows, because I have not shied away from it, my commitment when I ran, we're going to bring 1,000 people in here. We're going to bring 1,000 people in here who we welcome everybody. We welcome every age. We welcome folks my age and older. But we're targeting, with the limited amount of money that we have, a demographic that's basically 25 to 39. Basically that sweet spot. Folks that have not yet maybe gotten themselves into mortgages, maybe not have really put down those kind of firm roots that can't be uprooted, and the low-hanging fruit there are the alumni of SUNY, alumni of Harwick, and alumni of the Oneonta City School District. And so, again, I'm going to hand these out. Now, we had these produced and distributed at the June 9th alumni weekend up at SUNY. They took about 300 of them, to my knowledge, none are left, which is a great thing. We've got a wonderful committee that's in this recruitment and retention committee, which is comprised of the of the marketing specialists at SUNY, at Bassett, at Hardwick, at Springbrook, and at a couple of others, and they escaped me at the moment. But bottom line is David Starr, Oneonta High School. They're all part and parcel of a group that has connections to the groups that we need to be connected to, and has the experience to be able to provide us with a clear and likely connection to folks that we would otherwise be unable to probably connect with. The conceit of the mascots is one where people are being recruited by every municipality. We are not alone in that. But this gives us kind of a visceral connection to folks who have gone through 4 years or more in certain cases. That is, they know their mascot. They have a kind of an emotional connection to the mascot, and it makes it easier for us to be able to pitch them. The thing that you're reading there is a very hard pitch to alumni, specifically to alumni, and we'll be breaking that out into individual posts, social media, inserts, advertising, so forth and so on, without having to too much reinvent the wheel. So again, a lot of things going on. We are making progress. The last numbers that I looked at in the months, I don't have this past month's numbers, but the previous 3 months for the algorithm that the CNHI, Daily Star uses. Over 150 people have moved into the community. We have addresses, we have names, we know that, in fact, they're new residents in the community. Doesn't tell you anything about who's left the community. so it's not an empirical number in terms of the actual net gain, but it's still good news. So, unless there are questions, I'll move on. Do we have any questions? Yes.
Are you gonna put the map on in this parking one on the city?
Yeah, so what we're gonna do, it's a good question. So what we're gonna do, this has all been coming together extremely quickly.
I've been watching your social
Can't tell the bags under my eyes, but what we will wind up doing, we'll create an 11 by 17 brochure so that we can do the 8.5, 11 that you see basically there. This is just up a photocopier, so it's a little bit more down and dirty, but we'll have something appropriately printed that will be actually 11, 17. So in other words, 8.5, 11, then you open it up, and you've got an 11, 17 interior that is, to play with. So we'll have this map. We'll also be using Mo did. These are sweet. They're cute. They're all that. But Mo actually put together something that you can that's good. That's real. So we'll use that as well. And then we'll use some of the availability around space for pitching. And for redirecting, or rather directing people to websites, et cetera, for more information, maybe some calendar stuff. So yes, it'll be printed. It'll be printed on something that presents well, and that we'll probably look at a quantity of about 1,000 or so and see where we go with that. So,
Yeah, I was only asking about the city website, especially the one that Greg did, was because I know our residents, that's one of their biggest complaints is not being able to find the parking, and so I thought if something like that was on there that. So, thanks for looking into that. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So if there are no additional questions or comments, we'll move on to the city administrator's report. Greg? Sure.
A few quick things. Recent council meetings, we've had some comments and discussion about some of the city's recent funding that we've received or applied for through specifically for water system improvements. And I just wanted to clarify something. It seems like there's some misunderstandings and questions out there. So just to, and this is, big dollars, these are big projects, so it's good for us to understand those. So, regarding EFC, that's Environmental Facilities Corporation funding, those grants and loans are awarded based on the available project readiness. First, is the project listed? There's an annual list and a multi-year list. You need to be on the annual list, which requires a little bit more detail in your estimate and your scope of work, an engineer's report to be able to be listed and eligible for funding. And then there's a project score. Once these rounds are scored every year, they're scored based on a variety of factors, most of them technical, relating to the scope of work that's being proposed, as well as some financial considerations for the community that you're in. And then ultimately, depending on, if you have 100 communities apply and they all have their different scores, the number of projects that are funded is based on the program funding level that particular year. So they take that funding, they go down and they determine a funding line. So a score of 85 and above, or 40 and above, whatever the score may be, that particular round is funded. Scores do not consider letters of support or other communications from elected officials. While there are numerous technical factors that affect project scores, higher scores are given to projects in the case of water, these water projects, projects that address things such as regulatory compliance issues. Most often a project that's upgrading or improving the quality of water, or even just upgrading systems that are aging in water treatment facilities, are going to score higher than projects that are strictly distribution system improvements, replacing aged mains and water tanks and that sort of thing. In some cases, when you're able to bundle those projects together, you're able to get your score up and get some of those things done. So that's what we did we applied for 2 projects in 2022. As you know, we've talked about there's additional funding more than normal through these EFC programs. Usually there has been a WIA program, Water Infrastructure Improvement Act funding, and now there's the BILL program, Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. So we were aggressive in going after that funding. The one project that was funded, that we're actually currently in the process of evaluating engineers to hire to do design for, was the water plant / distribution project that had a score of 85 points. And again, the scores, that funding line depends on a number of factors each round. So in this case, 85 was above the funding line, so we were funded. It was an $8 million project. The WIA grant was $2 million, or the $3 million, sorry. The Bill grant was $2 million plus a $3 million 0% 30-year loan. Total project $8 million. So in that case, we've got the water plant improvements, and we also have some distribution improvements that, depending on the cost of the water plant improvements, where the costs are. Once we get to that point, we do some detailed design. We should be able to do some of both. The other project we applied for that was not funded, had a score of 45 points, was strictly a water distribution and storage tank project. Again, as I mentioned before, it doesn't have the technical scope that's going to give it that higher score, and that's why it wasn't funded. So in the future, if we reapply for a project, we'll probably see if there is a way to bundle a project again with treatment plant and distribution improvements, like we did with that first project that was funded. So I don't know, I mean, we can jump back to questions at the end or right now. I just wanted to make sure that we're on the same page as to how those funding, that funding source works. And speaking of capital projects, grants, we're planning, Judy's been working on, and Chris as well, and myself, capital projects and grants update. That's something that we'll spend a little bit of time on during our budget process this year. I think it'd be good for everyone to see where we're at, what we've been doing, and where we're planning to go, obviously. Some other ongoing project updates: Center Street, the bridge walls have been poured. They're forming the deck to be poured next, probably in the next few weeks. That portion of the project is expected to be complete by the end of August, or it's off 18. We're 80 feet done. I think we might be a little bit ahead. So, then we move on to Clinton Street. Sidewalk curb ramp replacements. You'll see some areas that have been dug out in preparation for pouring sidewalk at those handicap accessible crossings. That's being done throughout the city. Pavement markings are underway. You'll see some of the long lines have been painted. I believe they're working their way to downtown now. They'll be working at night, and as long as the weather permits, trying to move along and do. There's quite a bit of work to be done, but they're going to be working away, I think, until they're done. So. And then DPW continues working on installing wayfinding signs. It's a slower process. You've seen some of the green-colored parking signs. Those are a little bit easier to install. They're on existing posts or poles. Most of their signs require new poles and concrete pours, and they're a little bit bigger, so it'll take a while, but they're chipping away at it. That was all I had tonight, sir.
Okay, questions, comments? Okay, my remarks are going to be extremely short. I'm just reviewing all that I've just put out there for you guys, and I want to make sure if it's redundant, if I've already said it, it doesn't hurt to say it again. While the Cooperstown All-Star Village has a policy that they really do not want to have flyers distributed, in speaking with the CEO just before this meeting started, I asked them to make an exception to whatever you guys need. We are your partners. So I don't know if I said that. I want to make sure that it's clear that anything that is going to help the city, these guys with the Cooperstown All-Star Village are inclined to do. Okay, with that, we'll move on to the consent agenda. So, motion number 1, that the Common Council approves the minutes of the regular meeting held June 6, 2023. Motion number 2, that the Common Council approves the minutes of the special meeting held June 15, 2023. Motion number 3, that the Common Council approves the warrants totaling $587,402.04, and that the same be placed on the Director of Finance's desk for payment as presented. Also motion number 3, 3B. Motion that the Common Council approves the final 2022 budget transfers and amendments totaling $279,097 as presented in the attached reports. Motion number 4 on your agenda, that the Common Council approves the creation of the 2023 Sidewalks and Curbs Capital Project, which will be funded by a combination of funds provided from state funding and further authorizes the estimated project budgets and necessary budget amendments and transfers as follows. From the appropriation account H16.5112.231 Sidewalks and Curbs 2023, $110,000. From
Funding source, New York State Touring Aid, $110,000. Motion number 5, that the Common Council approves the purchase agent's recommendation to award the bid in the amount of $26,500 to upfit a 2023 Ram ProMaster cargo van with an Aries Mobile Pathfinder sewer inspection system to the lowest responsive qualified bidder, J&J Equipment LLC of Brewerton, New York. Motion number 6, that the Common Council approves the purchasing agent's recommendation to award the unit price bid for 2023 Transit Mix Concrete, the lowest responsive qualified bidder, Otsego Ready Mix Incorporated of Oneonta, New York. Motion number 7, that the Council authorizes the following changes to the City Code and authorizes the Department of Public Works to install the appropriate signs. Remove from 282-12 speed limits, State Street and Hazel Street, speed limit 30 miles per hour. Add to 282-12 speed limits, State Street, beginning at the intersection of Maple Street, proceeding north to the intersection of Hazel Street for traffic traveling in both directions. The speed limit will be 15 miles per hour. For Hazel Street, beginning at the intersection of State Street, proceeding northeast to the intersection of Sheridan Street for traffic traveling in both directions, speed limit 15 miles per hour. And that concludes the consent agenda. And do I have a motion to approve? Scott, followed by Mark. Do I have? I'm so sorry. Yeah, I am so sorry. Here. It's the way it works sometimes. Do we have anybody who'd like to pull anything? I guess I was just anticipating a unanimous council on that. All right. So, given the fact that we have nothing being pulled, we'll move on to our vote. Yes.
A motion to accept
the 3B.
Correct. The consent agenda.
I'll second that.
All right, and we will. Do I need a vote on that? I presume I probably do.
Yeah. For the consent.
Yep. Consent. All in favor? Aye. Okay. So we'll change that to 3B in this particular case. And now moving on to our vote.
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Councilmember Davies?
Yes.
Councilmember Risberger?
Yes.
Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Falco?
Aye.
Right, so we move on to general item for discussion, 7th Ward Council Member vacancy. So John and I had somebody in mind for that moment in time where he was going to wind up leaving. He knew he was going to be leaving. He wound up leaving a little bit earlier than he anticipated. The move to Philly is, moving any place is complicated. So while we miss John, we do need to fill that 7th Ward seat. The gentleman that we had both agreed was a terrific choice, somebody else thought was a terrific choice as well, and they offered him a job, employment. So he's no longer a perfect choice for me because, in fact, he does not have the time to do this. He's just now starting a new job. And so, between now and July 5th, our next meeting, I have printed out the voter roll for including Republicans, conservatives, independents, Democrats, liberals, Working Families Party, you name it. And I'm going through that list, and all those folks that I know, and I don't know everybody, but I know a lot of folks, that will comport themselves in a way that's going to be an asset to this council as we move forward with so many difficult lifts, and we do have a lot of huge decisions facing us over the course of these next 6 months. I will be interviewing folks. I will take this very seriously. I am not considering either candidate who is running for that seat. I don't feel like it's appropriate for me to put my thumb on the scale for either one of them. I wish them both good luck. The best person will win. But in the meantime, we're going to fill the seat with somebody who will be able to, as much as they're able, to hit the ground running and help this council in its deliberations and its decision making. I don't know who that person will be over the course of these next 2 weeks, basically. I'll be taking that charge extremely seriously, interviewing anybody that that I feel warrants an interview. I expect that should be a number of people. It's not a small ward. There are a number of people living in that ward. I've got a list of it's pushing around 400 people. Gone through the list one time. I'll be going through the list a second time, see if I can pare it down to a dozen or so that we can take to that next stage of are you interested in? If you are interested, you know, we'll bring somebody to you on the at the meeting of July 5th. We'll put that at the top of the council agenda. I'm confident that you'll agree with my choice. I'm not taking this any way except seriously. So whomever this person is, I think you'll find that this person is going to be a good addition to the council for these 6 months until the November election, and we have somebody that winds up seated in January. So I just wanted to bring you up to speed on where we are. You know, nothing ever goes exactly according to plan, but that's what makes life interesting. So there are a lot of wonderful people in the city of Oneonta, some of whom have never had city government experience before, and have done just fine, and will do just fine. So with that, that's what I have, you guys. This is a general discussion piece, so if you've got anything that you'd like to say to me on the subject. Okay. All right. In that case, we will conclude that item, and we'll move on to additional business and council discussion. Does anybody have anything for council discussion? Yes, Mark.
Not really council discussion. I hesitated pulling the motion, but I don't like doing that. I really wanted to take the opportunity to thank Chris and Greg for motion 7, which addressed the speed limit on around Bugby School. This was a concern that was brought to me by a constituent. It was then brought to the Quality of Life and Infrastructure Committee, and clearly I think Chris and Greg acted very quickly in terms of doing the research and getting this done, at least to the point where we voted on it tonight. So on behalf of the constituents in my ward that were concerned by this, thank you both very much for that effort. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate that. Dave?
Just in regards to parking along Main Street, I know we have it marked, it's 1 hour parking. I was out the other night, Monday night, last night, out to dinner to a restaurant on Main Street, and there were actually a lot of baseball families there. It was not expected because they were understaffed, and they said that they had people working that normally don't work on Monday nights. So it's a good thing, and the parking looked fairly full on Main Street. But the question I have is, the 1 hour parking, is that 24 hours a day, 1 hour parking? Or is this like 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. 1 hour parking? I mean, I kind of know, I've lived here long enough, I know how things work. But people that are coming in that want to go out to dinner, they see the sign 1 hour parking.
So there are signs now, I believe, at least some of them, there's some inconsistency where things have been changed or lost or replaced in the same time over the years. Now something that we're looking at as we look at all this, but I think they say either 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. or something like say 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. There's some inconsistencies there, but realistically, outside of that 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. time frame, we're not enforcing those 1 hour, 2 hour, or 4 hour limits wherever they are.
I don't know if I would say that.
Monday through Friday.
Those are good information to actually put out there for folks too. That come to evenings, you're likely not to be moved. I don't know what's going to happen when you move to paid parking, but that's a whole other conversation. Anything else for the good of the order?
Could you just
Yes.
remind us, what was the additional parking streetwise that you guys came up with? So that
Mark, I'm living in
I remember like 104 down at
Yes, yeah.
Park, and then
It's a couple of hundred, a little bit over a couple of hundred in the park and in the parking lot next door to it from the pavilion, right? And we find ourselves with a tremendous parking need. I continue to say we have Field 4. I don't know if that's universally being accepted, but we have
It's on the shuttle route.
We have Field, it's on the shuttle route, exactly right. So we have Field 4. We also have 47 spots that that we're in fact now painting, right? Or we'll be in process of painting shortly on Market Street. And that runs up and down both sides of Market Street, which is not, it's not intuitive for folks that are on Market Street to think that they can park right in front of the garage. But we're not using it, so may as well. So we've got 47 parking spots there, and that kind of snakes up into Chestnut Street Extension as well. And then we picked up, I think, exactly the same number of parking spots. I think it's 47, give or take, in the Dietz lot, which when you park on the behind the building, essentially, that's all public parking. That's all 24-hour parking there as well. So, so that between those two, you're looking at about 100, approximately 100 additional spaces. Market Street, Chestnut Street Extension, Dietz Street lot, and of course up Dietz Street too. A lot of people didn't realize they could park there. Of course, they can. And then you add into that the extra couple of hundred. So you're sitting at somewhere around beyond the Westcott lot, beyond the Dietz lot that we had before in play. And the Wall Street lot, you're looking at about 300 additional spots. Did I get that right? All right. Draw enough maps, you'll get these things figured out. All right. Is there anything else for discussion or council business to be brought up? Oh, Jenny.
I neglected to say thank you at the beginning of my presentation, and I just wanted to publicly thank Greg Mattice and Joe Temming for helping me put together the visuals for tonight's presentation.
All right, and we have, so no further council business. We'll move on to correspondence. And we have correspondence. Would you like to read it? You want me to read it? Or?
You're more than welcome to read it.
Okay, so with that, we have from Barbara J. Stevens. She asks, are you on the fence about this issue? Several weeks ago, my neighbors ran into a problem. They are master gardeners who have recently moved to Oneonta from another state and were surprised by the number of deer here. They have built upraised vegetable gardens and researched what flowers and shrubs are deer resistant. After reading in the Daily Star, probably the best deterrent is a fence. They called a professional fence company to install an 8-foot fence around their garden. Soon after, an adult deer ran into the fence, broke its neck, and died. What to do? They called the city police, the DEC, Department of Environmental Conservation, and the DPW, Department of Public Works. They were told by each department that they were not responsible for removing dead animals from people's yards. My neighbors would be responsible for removing the body themselves. These are not young people, not physically able to do this, so they enlisted the aid of their son and his wife from another community to drag the deer close to the road. This was no easy task. Since we no longer have an animal control officer, what are people to do? So that's the correspondence. Can we address that in any way at all, in terms of somebody has a dead animal on the perimeter of their property?
If a dead animal is in the public right of way, then we can collect it and dispose of it. That's been, it comes up a couple times a year typically, and that's been our consistent answer.
If they can get it to the road, we'll get it. We just can't go on private property.
No, and that makes sense, the access to private property. Yes?
You can't go on a private property even if they're requesting that you come to get it?
Correct. Right.
Okay.
Interesting.
We don't do public work on private property.
Right, I understand. I guess I'm just thinking of it more as a health issue kind of thing, like you don't really.
Also, we, the city and property owners have no ownership of wild animals, either dead or alive. They're owned by the state of New York, and they're totally controlled by DEC. They may not remove them, but wild animals are not within our purview.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right, well, that ends the correspondence portion of the program, and we move now to executive session, which in fact we do need. And Greg, there's a rationale for that?
It's to discuss a matter that needs to be just to discuss a matter needing to be.
Okay. All right.
So I know we need Joe. Who else do we need? Just Joe. Just Joe. So we won't be long, guys.
I'll start.